Hi, my name is George Loudon. I am co-owner of a small business by the name of Robust Web Services with my wife, Louise. Louise was diagnosed in early 2024 with early-stage Alzheimer's and dementia, and after we discovered the fantastic organization of the Snow Approach Foundation, led by Tipa Snow and Amanda Bulgarelli, Louise and I decided to form a new wing of the organization called TheBrainPuzzler.com, with the specific focus of producing puzzles that people undergoing brain change, as well as those people that are looking to understand more about the brain, to provide them with a playful way of getting some basic knowledge about the brain. So we created various puzzles that individuals of all age can play with and hopefully stimulate mind while doing it. The puzzles that we have designed and create are actually created by means of the various printers that you see behind me, and we create two puzzle profiles, as it were. The first profile is the typical sort of flat puzzle that you would expect to buy from a store, and comes with flat pieces such as this. And then the other type is three-dimensional, an example of which is what we call the MegaBrain, which is a very large example of the brain. And I'm going to go through what these puzzles involve, and another example of the 3D brain, which is a smaller version, actually the original version that we created, is over here. So the one I've just shown you is essentially twice the volume of this brain. Okay, so in order to demonstrate the puzzles, I'm going to flip the camera down, so you're no longer going to see my face, which is probably a good thing, and look directly at the various puzzles that I've unpacked. Okay, so what you're seeing in front of you right now are the examples of what I refer to as the flat versions of our brain puzzles, and these are the best-selling puzzles that we currently have. And I'll start with a group of 3 puzzles. All of these puzzles are available on Etsy and in various forms, so you can buy them individually or you can purchase them in sets. This is essentially the set of 3 different puzzles. The first puzzle in this set is the basic brain, which highlights the various brain lobes. You'll notice too that there is a description of what the various lobes are named and a little more detail about the puzzle. This brain is, as the heading indicates, is more of a detailed indication of the areas of the outer brain. And so this includes both the lobes, the various lobes, as well as some of the primary cortexes. And then finally, in this collection, we have what we refer to as the inner brain puzzle. So in this particular example, and again, it provides information about the puzzle itself, what the areas are referred to as. And this is just providing more detailed, basic information about the components within the inner brain. Now, of course, these puzzles are more about putting the various pieces together rather than being exactly anatomically precise. It's more about learning the basics while you're having fun putting the pieces together. And then finally, we have, as part of the set, the actual base of the puzzle. You'll notice that we've got the QR code that if you were to pass your camera over that, you'd be able to go to our Etsy site. And this provides a sort of a basic reference to the various pieces, the outer sort of reference to where the pieces are going to go. If you don't use this, it actually makes the puzzles a little more challenging because you don't have sort of an outline to work with. If you want to add a little more complexity while building the puzzle, then you could build them without the base. But let's start by actually building the 3 puzzles quickly to give you some idea of what they're about. I'm going to shift these guys over for a start. Let's start by building the inner brain. Empty all the pieces out so you can see the puzzle pieces. I'm going to take the card out. So there again is the card for the puzzle. Okay, so now, of course, bear in mind I'm building this upside down, so let's hope I can do it. There we go. That, I guess, is going to go there. It should go sort of more or less there. It looks like it fits there. Again, notice that it's all held within the base. This is the brain stem, which I guess goes down there. This is the cerebellum. Yep, that kind of fits like that. Let's put this guy over there. This goes over here. I think I'm getting there. Put that over there, and finally put this piece. And if you wanted to know what this piece is, it's number 1 on this list. So this is the hypothalamus. And again, it's not anatomically exact, it's just to give you some idea of approximately where these areas of the brain are located. So this is the inner brain that has been completed. Let's move that to the side. Let's take a more detailed outer brain. Move that card out of the way. So again, this is the card associated with this puzzle. Components. Let's start with the frontal lobe. Looks like that kind of goes there. Yep. Goes there. Okay. Now this is part of the motor cortex, I think. It looks like it slots in there. Okay. Goes there, and finally the brain stem, and that is the more sort of detailed view of the outer brain, showing the various lobes as well as the cortexes. All right, and finally let's take the more basic view, or just the various lobes themselves, and let's assemble those. So again, that's the card for this, showing the various lobes. And build this guy. And there you go. So you notice this particular one is far less complicated than the others. Obviously it has fewer pieces, so it's easier to assemble. All right, the next set of puzzles that we have, I created these specifically for those individuals that may find it easier to identify matching colors versus matching shapes. And these particular puzzles the pieces revolve around a hub. So clear the decks here a little. Okay, the first one we'll look at is this puzzle here, which, as you'll notice, and let me unpack it so that it's easier to see the card. You'll notice that the hub has a number of circular keys around it that are color-coded. So all of the keys, as it were, are all round. They're not different shapes. They're all the same size. But what distinguishes them is their color. And obviously, the player is going to attempt to associate the colors of the various pieces, in this case, the various lobes, with the associated colors in the hub. So let me take pieces out of the packing. We'll start by putting the hub down, and then you could start anywhere. I'll start with the frontal lobe. Obviously, the reds should coincide with the associated colors on the hub. If you were to start with one circular key in one color and the other in the next, it obviously doesn't make much sense. So you would want to match reds with reds. So it's just a case of slotting it in. You don't have to push it heavily down. It just slots like that. The next piece, the yellows, would go there. The next color is a little difficult to see, but it's gray. So I'm going to match the gray. Now, at point, you'll notice that if you look at the key, it's slightly offset. So if you attempt to put it in one way, it won't necessarily fit. You'll slide it in one particular direction only, and that way it fits. The cerebellum again, and then I'm going to put in the brain stem, and finally the green, and there we go. That's that particular puzzle done. So again, if the individual playing with this puzzle has a preference for matching colors, this would possibly an easier one for them to do than any trying to match shapes when it comes to aligning it with the hub. The next puzzle is one that attempts to match shapes rather than colors. So taking the card out, and you'll notice that the hub has specific shapes, and obviously the various lobes have the associated shapes, so it's a case of trying to match the lobe shapes with the hub shapes. So let's grab the hub, the label facing upwards, and that way you've got the direction of the pieces that'll fit in. Now in this particular puzzle, these pieces would go right through, as opposed to the colored pieces which can't go through. They basically sit on top of the matching color. It doesn't go all the way through. So in this particular shape puzzle, put the hub down, and I attempt to match the shape of the key to the shape on the hub. And as you'll notice, a lot of them are pretty obvious, and that's the one that fits. So that's the frontal lobe, so we'll start there. Let's do the cerebellum. Which one will fit here? The cerebellum, yeah, that doesn't really fit in there. It doesn't fit properly in there. It doesn't fit at all in there. It's way too small for that. Oh, hang on a second. There you go. It fits there. The brain stem, again, it's not going to fit there or there. Hang on a second. Fits there. Then the yellow piece, does it go this way? Nope. Goes that way. Okay. What about the green? Yep, the green is going to go there, and the gray piece is going to fit. Oh, okay, hang on a second. This piece doesn't look right? It's not fitting properly. Let me turn it over, and just had to turn the cerebellum over, and everything now fits together. The next puzzle relates to the limbic system, so let's have a look at that. All right, pack it. Again, you get a card which highlights the various components, as it were, of the limbic system. You get a puzzle base, and I'll put it that way so it wouldn't be upside down to you. And then we'll take out the various puzzle pieces. Okay, and this puzzle is fairly challenging in that the base, and I'll bring this up, the base has some unusual kind of outlines to it. In some ways it's obvious because this piece would not fit any other particular way. But when you get to some of the more internal or the smaller pieces, things become a little more challenging. So let's see, this guy I guess is gonna go that way. You'll notice it's sitting snug. This guy, I guess, yep, that fits there. This one looks like it's gonna fit there. This one, this is gonna kind of fit there. Yep, there we go. There's another grey piece which kind of fits there. I'm sensing a circular piece that needs to fit there, which is probably that guy. Then this area here is a little tricky. Yep, there we go. What about this green piece? Okay, and the orange piece goes there. Alright, so that again, the colored areas are the sort of primary components of the limbic system, and again, if you look at the card, it'll give you an indication of what those areas present. The second type of puzzle that we have are the fully three-dimensional puzzles, as opposed to the sort of flatter puzzles. And the original three-dimensional puzzle that we brought out is this guy. So we're looking at the various external, or the various lobes, as it were, of the brain, plus a couple of the cortexes, including the premotor and motor cortexes. It comes with its own stand, so I'll just remove this. When you remove the stand, it also exposes the brain stem. So let's go ahead and disassemble this brain. When you get it, it'll be pre-assembled as it is, but obviously you're going to take it apart and then reassemble it. So it's a magnetized puzzle. If you wanted to split the brain in half, you would literally just grab the lobes on either side and gently pry it apart, and that gives you left and right areas. Notice that we've got the various magnets that keep everything together. Another way that you could actually start taking it apart is keep it together, and then maybe remove the cerebellum, and you can obviously separate the cerebellum. And then if you wanted to get to the brain stem, maybe separate the brain stem and the associated parts, then you could start by removing the prefrontal lobe, and then also remove these components here, and then you could even go further and split the prefrontal into the two halves. Notice now that you're viewing the stem with the associated brain components, and I could potentially remove it right now, but what I'm going to do is remove the premotor cortex, and I should now be able to fairly easily slide the brainstem and the associated bits with it. And then at this point, I could just keep on separating pieces if I wanted to. Maybe at this point I'll separate the remaining lefts and rights, and then just break the various pieces apart. So eventually I'm just left with a whole bunch of brain components. Shift them this way, which in a way looks like my brain is, and I can then put it back together. So let's see how everything fits. Does that go? Let's see. Yep, there we go. Let's take the other side. There we go. Maybe the yellow again. There we go. And let's put the motor cortex in place. Snap that in, snap that in. Maybe at this point put the two pieces together. What you could do if you wanted to is take the cerebellum and attach it to the brain stem like that and like that, and then just gently insert them into the rest of the brain that you put together, and you'll notice things have now started snapping together. Let's put the pre-motor cortexes in place, and before I put the prefrontal lobes together, I'm going to snap them together and just add these. Now what are these? Let's see. There are cards that come with the puzzle. So let's see. As you'll notice, the cards indicate or ask the question, name essentially the name and the function of the particular region, and I need to understand what the region in pink is, and I don't remember it offhand, so I just flip it over and it tells me it's the orbitofrontal cortex, and there you can see it. And if I look at some of the other cards, what is the dark blue region, which is this area here, and that is the brainstem. Okay. Again, it's not attempting to be anatomically exact, just providing you with some general knowledge as you have fun putting the brain together or tearing it apart. So now that I'm attaching the orbitofrontal cortex to the prefrontal lobe, I can now finally insert them all together, and there we go. And then you're going to place this on its stand just like that. Now, this particular three-dimensional brain, as I mentioned, was our original brain, and we've had requests subsequently to enable instructors to use a larger version of this when providing instruction to larger groups of students, which led us then to develop what we refer to as the MegaBrain. So let me just clear the decks here so that I can move it in. And there is the MegaBrain. So it's an exact replication of the original brain. Believe it or not, this brain is twice the volume of this brain. And I'm not going to attempt to take it apart completely, but as I mentioned, all the components are exactly the same. And let's take the cerebellum out. Works in exactly the same way, just very much larger magnets than the other one has. And let's separate the two halves. It's a little more difficult to do because obviously it's much larger, but there you go. So that is the MegaBrain, which is twice the volume of the smaller original three-dimensional brain. If you would like to view more information about these puzzles, please refer to our Etsy site. The actual QR code is this guy here, which you may want to just take a picture of and go and view the various puzzles. Thank you for your time, and I certainly hope that we can have you enjoy our various puzzles.